Can I ask you, when you start your creative process, do you think first about subject, media, color? What comes first in that process?
Usually, what comes first is 'cause I work. Most of my work is large like this, although sometimes I do medium size, but most of my work is large. So the figure is almost life size. So
Hmm.
when I start a work of art and I have a blank piece of canvas or paper in front of me, I first start just working with charcoal and just letting myself loose. Like letting myself, I don't have an idea what I'm going to make yet. So I'm just kind of drawing, putting some shadings, some lines, some form. And then I step back, for a little bit. And then I start thinking about, okay, where is the figure going to be? What is it going to do? Because if the figure is the language that's going to communicate, a pose like this means something versus a pose like this, for example, right? So I think of those things like, this figure right here, it's elevating, right?
Hmm.
It seems to be levitating, leaving the ground, right? So I think about that, what that means, what am I going to do? Color for me happens, in the process, and it never ends up being the color that I start with. My paintings are built up layer by layer with, I use acrylic, so there are washes of color, and hundreds of them, So my paint is very thin, but it builds up over time from all the washes. So I use a lot of water. Usually in one hand I have my brush, and the other hand is my spray bottles. The spray bottles, and tools that I use to scrape the surface. So for example, I have the first iPhone, the iPhone 1 that's very round, more like smaller
Uh-huh.
than the new one, but all the edges are super round, more like egg shape. I use that phone, which of course doesn't work anymore, to scrape my surface and move the paint around. And the reason I like it is because there's no, any other object usually has a hard edge,
Yes.
but the iPhone first version has no hard edges at all. It's super smooth all around. So as I push the paint around, it doesn't leave a line.
There we have something else, and it is we can use anything
Anything.
around us.
Yeah,
Anything
absolutely.
can be a tool or can be part of our art. So I
Mhm.
love that concept. So you normally work on with acrylic.
Right.
And then what surfaces do you normally use? Is it wood, canvas, paper?
Normally, for the last, I'd say 15 to 18 years, I've been using paper. So these big paintings are on paper that then they are adhered to canvas. So
Okay.
it's paper on the front, canvas in the back. That's what makes them super flat. I can roll
Hmm.
them up, ship them to anywhere in the world really easily. And in one tube, I can put 10 paintings, you know. And so it works really nice. And then once in a while, like the new series and like these ones on the side, those are canvas. So once in a
Okay.
while, I get back to canvas. My preferred medium is paper. I love paper. I love the feel of it. I love how it absorbs the paint, and I just love the flexibility. And also because my work, if like paper has this kind of more personality that it can get kinked right away, right? It can get bent, it can get damaged. So our lives,
Yeah.
circumstances of life can hurt us and leave a mark. And so paper does the same. Canvas, you can get away, you can stretch it again, you can, spray
Hmm.
it, and you'll fix it. But paper, once it's got a kink, you got to work with it.
Yes.
So I
Hmm.
kind of I kind of like the aspect of it, symbolically related to our experience as human beings. Definitely the making, the making of the work. I like the middle section. That's where I, I like the part when I don't know what's going to happen, and that gives me challenge. The part that I'm struggling, that I'm wrestling with the painting, that's my favorite part. As I am right now with these ones that I'm working on. I don't know where they're going to lead me. I'm still trying to figure out, trying to make them work. I love that wrestling, with the work. Once it has found its form, and now you're just fine tuning it, taking it to the next level. I like that, but by that point, I already know where it's going. But that middle section where it's a give and take, and you don't know if it's going to happen in one day or 1 week, that's my
Hmm.
favorite spot. Yeah. I think it was about, I think 14 years ago. One day I was driving. Back then I was teaching at the local college, and I was driving, and on the way there, I had a vertigo episode. So everything started spinning really bad. And so that the doctors over time and many studies, they believe it was some sort of a viral infection in the ear that caused some permanent damage. So from that point, I've always struggled with vertigo. And like the first 6 months were like really horrible. Like I would, get an episode and I couldn't walk at all. I would be fall on the ground, and I was totally disabilitated for like 2 3 days because the episodes would last that long, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
really bad, horrible. Slowly got better and treatments and so on, but out of that whole season, I didn't make art for maybe about 6 7 months. I didn't touch anything. I just couldn't. I was just trying to survive. Trying to be alive, and that I remember when I got back in the studio, one of the first paintings I did um, was called Vertigo, and it was a piece that visually represents what I was feeling, in that moment. So it was a big painting like this, where there's two figures. One is like straight, and the other one is kind of going like this sideways, representing both states, the balance and the off balance. And that was an important piece. And to my surprise, that painting sold right away. you know but you just never know. But it's a painting that came out of a very specific moment in my
Mm-hmm.
life that was a bad moment. But the painting allowed me to to make sense out of that.
Absolutely. And transform that moment and that experience, which is something that we try to encourage the patients.
Yeah.
Use any type of art expression
Hmm.
to transform, hopefully,
Hmm.
that feeling, that moment, and help
Hmm.
them heal in a way.
Right.
So very, very interesting. Are your pieces usually um, have a content and a meaning, or are they more free? And then you just find a concept that they adhere to.
Mhm.
How do you feel your pieces are normally?
It's a bit of both. I think everything that we make has meaning in some way or fashion, right? um because we don't create on a vacuum. We create based on our experiences and based on our knowledge and based on who we are. But in terms of specifically knowing what I want to say, sometimes it's very obvious and very strong, and sometimes it's more elusive. For example, I besides the series that I have here that I call the Cycles of Life, I have also another series that deals with immigration, and which is something I'm passionate about. So when I make a piece on that series, from the beginning, I already know exactly what I want to say, because it's a social issue that I want to make sure that it's understood what I'm trying to say, and that kind of thing. So that type of work for me, you know, the meaning comes first, and it leads the way because um, it needs to be said correctly for where the position that I want to have on that. And versus when I'm doing my cycles of life, because there's a life is unknown and there's like certain aspects of that. I love that on this series there's a more elusiveness to that. Meaning doesn't have to come in first. It's okay if I start the piece and then meaning catches up afterwards. There are days that nothing works, and my reaction is that I don't overthink it. I used to. I don't feel bad. I don't say, oh, what a waste of my day. you know it's just part of what it is. Like I said, that day I may be just moving stuff around in my studio, and then I find a book that I haven't seen in 3 years, and then all of a sudden I sit down and check it out, and that was a worthwhile time spent in my studio. So I just allow myself to have those moments, and there are some times that could last a week or two where I'm just moving stuff around and nothing's happening. But then when the other, in the opposite, you cannot just wait for that to happen. Never, otherwise, sometimes nothing happens. I had to start moving paint, and I started moving art. Making things. By doing so, then I allow the process to catch up again, right?
Hmm.
And And just by picking, okay, the next I'm gonna pick a square and it's gonna be this size, and I start stretching it, and even though I might not know what it is, but I'm already making the path that's going to allow that to happen, versus waiting first for the inspiration, and maybe waiting for too long, but rather allow the inspiration to flow into you versus the other way around.
So is your growth accidental or planned?